Guess to our second point, which is it's like the sequel strike back, meaning there's very hardly big budget productions that are coming out. It seems like everything's a sequel. Everything the studios are afraid to spend money on anything less than what they think is going to be a guaranteed hit, right? I mean, we see it now. We did have, we're talking about, the King of the Monsters, but we're also talking about stuff like this that came out. So, Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, it's basically a sequel of a sequel of a sequel. So what's new that's coming to Hollywood? That's sequels. The sequel is basically the new thing. It's the guarantee thing. What's going on?
We just did a study on this thing, and Hollywood is completely flipped. I mean, you go back 30, 40 years ago. In fact, let's stick with 40 years ago, because this franchise, Ghostbusters, that's when it started, right? And you go back to 1984, and of the biggest films of the year, only one or two of them were actually sequels. Now you come to the modern age where you're lucky if you get one or two movies in the top 10 films of the year that aren't sequels. And last year was kind of an exception with Barbie and Oppenheimer, right? And you could even put in an asterisk next to Barbie, because that's still technically something like a comic book or a video game toy kind of thing, where it's still coming from an old IP. And even Oppenheimer, that's the thing. Seems like the only times they can make a dramatic film anymore and it make any money is if it's a biopic or the latest has been the product pick, or whatever you want to call it, because you have like the McDonald's movie, the Tetris film, and stuff like that. Even the Gran Turismo movie, where it's based around the concept as a product, so it's more of a biopic about that thing. You even had the Cheetos movie, the one with the came out.
Oh yeah.
Flaming Hot.
Flaming Hot and Air is another good example of one of those two.
Right, yeah.
So these have kind of become the new biopics now, and if it's not those, it's musical biopics, right? Especially since the Queen one hit. But Ghostbusters, and we did a video on this. There's a study that came out recently. There's a few studies. One, it's showing that millennials and Zoomers are just sick and tired of sequels, franchises, remakes, reboots of the sort. They want their own thing. Now, even though you could consider things like Dune and Godzilla in that reboot range, I'll put an asterisk next to them, because they're their own version of them, right? Same thing with Dune. Dune is not something that's been around for 20 plus years just from the sci-fi version, and you're even 40 years removed from the original. And there's another movie that came out in 1984, right? So, I mean, even though it's still an adaptation of a book, so it's still kind of its own thing. Plus, you got the Timothée Chalamet and Zendaya element there. And that's the same thing with Wonka. The reason why I think Wonka did so well had more to do with Timothée Chalamet being in it than anything. But the fact that the movie wasn't that bad also helped it. But even though it's a prequel to a 60-year-old film, it has Timothée Chalamet in it instead. But I mean, a lot of these kids nowadays, they want their own thing. And really, how long has it been since kids have had their own thing? Harry Potter, right? I mean, and those kids are now adults. And that's kind of the same thing here with Ghostbusters. A lot of the people that liked the film were adults. Kids could just care less. I don't think McKenna Grace or Finn Wolfhard are a type of draw that Timothée Chalamet is. And even if Timothée Chalamet was in this movie, I don't know if it would have helped. And I enjoyed this film. I had a good time with it. But I also feel like maybe Ghostbusters time has passed. They tried it now twice. It didn't quite catch on the way they were hoping. The only people who are enjoying it are the older crowd. So in that case, you got to budget it for that. But I mean, look at the number of sequels, prequels, remakes, all this shit we got coming up down the pipeline. I mean, just this morning alone, we're getting another Matrix movie. Who the hell asked for one? The last one flopped.
Another one? What?
Yes.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
I mean, you've got The Crow. I mean, we even got Highlander and some other things I may be looking forward to, like Highlander, but still, that doesn't matter. The point is we're stuck in this rut creatively, where we came from an era where all these movies that we're remaking and doing now come from an era where, there was the last real bastion of creativity left. and that was like the 80s and early 90s, basically.
I'm still thinking about another Matrix movie, but okay. If you think about, they
I
killed.
know, right?
Yeah, they absolutely killed Ghostbusters. I don't think kids nowadays are not willing to give a chance to something like Ghostbusters, but 2016, they destroyed the confidence on the franchise.
That didn't help either.
Yeah,
Yeah, that really hurt the
they
momentum.
they make it over political. All the discussion about it was overly political. The fact that the movie sucked also was a big deterrent for the Afterlife movie. Afterlife was actually really enjoyable. I had a good time with it. I had a blast seeing all the small details that it was just an
I
homage.
mean, Ghostbusters might be an example, not to interrupt you, Pablo, but I think Ghostbusters just might be an example of getting too nerdy or getting too inside jokey, or however you want to put it, making it too fan servicey. And I can understand some people saying that, especially Afterlife, because like some people just didn't dig it,
Yeah,
and I'm not saying that people who are fans of the first two films didn't like it are wrong, but to me it felt like the more into the franchise you were, like if you were like a casual viewer of the original films, that's cool. If you like the cartoon, yeah, but unless you were somebody who's really nerdily into the Ghostbusters universe, I don't know if these last two movies are for anybody else but you. And that's what I got out of the last one specifically, was walking out of Frozen Empire. I'm like, that was a live action real Ghostbusters episode,
Right.
right? Like that's what it felt like to me. I mean, all the politics shit aside, that's kind of bogging the film down, and maybe we'll readdress that in a few minutes here. But yeah, I mean, I think maybe that's the bigger problem here, is it's too inside baseball, perhaps for the general audience at this point.
uh, maybe the 2016 opportunity, not the final product, but the opportunity of having a reboot was kind of good idea, because people were waiting for the Ghostbuster 3 movie for a long time. We never really get that. We had a video game on the Nintendo Wii that people took as, this is Ghostbusters 3 and that's it. We don't need anything else. But yeah, the time had passed enough. There was enough separation. There were a new batch of kids that maybe you can entice with something like a Ghostbuster reboot, but they missed that train, and then they have to go back to the previous movies. They have to keep going to the original movies, because, well, if they don't do that, there's no confidence on anything coming from
Well,
Ghostbusters.
I agree with you to a point, except for I wouldn't have rebooted it. I think the biggest problem was rejecting the audience at that point,
Yeah.
because the audience was expecting a Ghostbusters 3. I think most people can understand that these guys are old enough that they're going to have to pass down the torch. But I guess what I'll agree with what you just said, Pablo, is that the time had passed now, because of they squandered the 2016 film. Because really, these last two movies didn't have much worse of an opening than that film. But I just wonder if we've reached a point where the past due date on some of these franchises has passed, right? Maybe Ghostbusters is only big enough to function on like a net streaming series, right? Or something like that, where you have Bill Murray pop up once in a
Right.
while instead of the whole movie.
And why?
Again, that could be something we could really get into and debate all day long. But I think the bigger, broader problem here is just more so kids want the Zoomers, the millennials. One of the main reasons why I feel like they're not going to the movies and they're not interested in films is there's nobody making films for them, right? I mean, we can have these Ghostbuster movies. That's not a problem. But there's nobody that's making anything that's specific. Like even the Matrix, a 25-year-old franchise.
And
Why?
Did to
it's
death.
not a kid-friendly franchise. If you cannot target to a
But
new
even when I
audience
say
something.
kids, I mean teenagers too.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah,
granted.
yeah.
The Matrix was top 90s. It was the best movie for finishing the 90s. It had the attitude, it had the darkness, the plot was a bit nonsensical, to be honest, but again, if you want to discuss how difficult it will be to generate that much heat and using that heat to power the machines when Zion works using energy from the center of the earth, that actually the machines could do, and the machines will not need a human anymore. There's a bunch of stupid plot details there that need a lot of suspension of disbelief to actually work. But the movie was the 90s. The movie felt like the 90s. The music, the atmosphere. At the beginning, you had all that corporate pressure over Neo that you could feel at that time. It was when the big companies were starting to actually destroy confidence on working for them, even more than in the 80s with all the scandals. But this is the time where people were actually fed up, were tired, and you can see all that reflected on the movie. The sequels tried to be sci-fi, done in a really weird way. I still enjoy a lot of Reloaded. I have a lot of gripes with Revolution, but still there's some fun scenes there. The fourth movie was absolutely shit. There was nothing of that sensation of I just hate the world, I hate everything, but I'm cool, man.
No, I think you hit the nail on the head, at least from what I'm translating from what you just said there. And that is the first Matrix basically used anime and sci-fi as a vessel to tell this story about corruption and all that kind of stuff, as opposed to the sequels, which basically were created by those people who corrupt.
Yeah, exactly.
And the fourth film, even more so. Like the fourth film, like, look, I don't even understand why they're doing a fourth one, because I sum up the fourth film really simply here in less than a minute. If you guys want to hear this, I did this like when it first came out.
What is everyone's
I
thoughts
have-
on the Matrix Resurrections?
Matrix, no more erections.
Yeah.
I feel like there was like a 60 to 70-minute episode of something good maybe in there. And most of it involves everything that had anything to do with Neil Patrick Harris, pretty much.
Wow.
I agree with his character a lot more than I expected to, and the rest of it is just like shotgun references wrapped around a really bad fan film.
This
Yeah.
movie, you guys aren't even seeing the truth. This movie is about a man who has to get ready for a date, so he takes a little blue pill.
That
Because he
would be a
can't get
better
it up no
concept.
more.
Yes, I didn't know I didn't notice that.
No, that's a good one.
It's true. It's in the movie.
No,
he
it
can't
is. It
fly.
is the movie.
He
He
was-
couldn't fly. He couldn't get it up.
Yeah, he was taking a blue pill every day. Did you notice that?
Yeah, he was.
That's going to lead to a priapism. I'm just sorry. It's a medical condition you just don't want as a dude.
So yeah, I had less than 30 seconds. I guess I summed it up in 15 seconds. The Matrix no erections is basically that: a guy who has a date with an old flame and he can't get it up anymore, so he has to pop a little blue pill so he can.
Oh my gosh,
Yeah,
from
basically,
saving
but I think-
humanity.
I think the movie, and I have had this clip from that movie for since day one because the movie leaked. This is basically what the movie said.
Bye.
Yeah,
And yeah, that's how the movie ends. It's just bye.
she's got to get him up. Yeah,
And she flies away. And I hated that movie so much. God damn.
But you know
Yeah,
what's
but
gonna
just-
fix it, Pablo? Another one.
another one. Yeah.
That's gonna.
At least
really
I think
fix
this
it.
time is the Wachowskis have very little to nothing to do with this one. But anyway, I just want to run through this real quick because this is just a small sample. I don't even think this is all of them, of just all the sequels, remakes, prequels we're getting this year. Deadpool 3,
All right.
Despicable Me 4,
Right.
the
yeah,
Furiosa Mad Max prequel, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, Joker 2, Quiet Place prequel, Gladiator 2.
Why?
We've got Fall Guy, which is a remake of a TV show. We've got eventually at some point Spider-Man Beyond the Spider-Verse is supposed to be out. I don't know when it's
Right.
coming, but yeah. Inside Out 2, Sonic the Hedgehog 3. We've got a remake of The Hunchback of Notre Dame they keep threatening us with. Venom 3, Beetlejuice 2, Cruella 2, Mortal Kombat 2, Mufasa prequel from The Lion King, Maleficent 3. Do you need me to go on? This is and you also got
Right.
we've got Beverly Hills Cop 4, Bad Boys 4,
That's what I'm saying.
miss
This is
Rush
just-
Hour
is-
4 is also supposedly coming. Like,
Rush
yeah,
Hour?
like
Come on.
yeah, there's even rumor that that's supposed to be happening. Yeah.
Oh, don't forget
I
we got
miss-
Twisters. which,
Twisters.
you
I mean, I didn't
Oh.
even get through half of them. That's my
Yeah.
point. Like, there's more. There is more. I'm just talking about the top ones that are here on this list. Like, those are ones that people are most anticipating. So,
Do you
yeah.
remember the era where people will use Roman numerals to say this is a sequel because they were ashamed of it being a
Yes.
sequel?
Thank you, because I've actually pointed that out to people because most people didn't realize that was why Friday the 13th and those kind of movies always, because they knew their audience could give a shit and they didn't. They
Yeah.
were embarrassed that it was the 6th or the 7th film.
If
They
you
used to be
say-
embarrassed by sequels. Yeah.
yeah,
Friday
if you
the
say
13th,
Friday,
13th.
yeah, if you say Friday the 13th to somebody on this era, they will go, well, where's the other 12 movies? Because people are just used to the number, meaning there's another movie. We used to use numbers to define this is the first movie of the thing. It's just called 13.
Well, now they're getting away from that again. Now they're giving them all different weird titles. So I feel really bad for the people who've got to figure out some of these movies in the future. Because you're just
Right.
going to have to go by the release dates at best you can.
But that
Oh,
I
the
think it
sequels
all
are the
got
same.
ruined.
Revelation.
Right.
Yeah.
But that's just for us. We're the geeks. You know, we're out there and we kind of figure some of this stuff out. We're getting confused. But I feel bad for the normies because my poor sister loved Doctor Strange. And then she's like, hey, how good is Doctor Strange 2? Because I really want to see it. And they're thinking I have to sit there and explain to my poor normie sister who really liked Doctor Strange that maybe Doctor Strange 2 is not a good idea because she has no clue because she didn't do her homework. She didn't watch all the Wanda
yes.
films. She didn't do all the stuff. And you're like, so that's not really Doctor Strange 2. You're
No,
not
it's
talking
not.
about Doctor Strange 2. This is not Aliens 2. We're dealing with
And
a
I'm sure-
whole different thing.
And I'm sure you've heard me say that very same thing. And I do believe that's where the Marvel Universe lost the general audience. Because, I mean, I think they could have stuck around with the general audience for a little bit longer. The mistake they made was just that. You had Doctor Strange 2, a movie that did, I think, pretty well at first. I mean, and it did manage to almost leg out at $1 billion. But that was only, I think it would have done much better had it been what it should have been, a Doctor Strange 2 and not a sequel to all these other things that didn't matter, because instead of building off of Spider-Man No Way Home in the original Doctor Strange film, like you just pointed out, it was a sequel to the WandaVision series that nobody watched. So unless you watch the show, you're completely lost on what is kind of going on in the movie, or you just don't give a shit, right? Like that's the other problem. I think that's when the general audience kind of checked out at that point. And the biggest, and the next big point was when they had a Black Panther movie, when Black Panther was literally not in the movie.
Not in the movie.
Like,
For the videos
the new to Black Panther.
For the videos, I always use that print screen that I have, where is Shuri as Black Panther, looking scrawny and walking like she's dying, because that's the perfect example of what that movie is. It's just,
it is.
Yeah, is an scrawny.
Well, and talk about screwing up a character that's never got his just dues, right? Like Black Panther's been a character that's kind of just been bounced around in the background for the years of Marvel entertainment. And all of a sudden you bring out Black Panther at the perfect time. And that's one thing I do say with the reason why that movie did so well is it was brought out at a time when race tensions and all this other stuff with the BLM movement and all that stuff was at its peak, at this fever pitch. So you brought this movie out you couldn't have brought it out at a better time unless it was like right after like Martin Luther King had gotten killed or something like that back in the day. Because like that's the only way that this movie is going to be that big. And then you follow it up instead of recasting T'Challa, which it's sad that we lost Chadwick Boseman. But if you're going to do it, you got to keep that character alive. Because right now you got to run with that momentum. And, there's a lot of guys that I've talked to that agree with me on this. They're like, yeah, it just makes no sense, especially to, little boys. Like, what does that say to you? Oh, by the way, that hero that you love, he's gone. He's dead.
Mhm.
Fuck him, and you're going to play with this girl doll now. Right? Like,
It's just insane.
it makes
It's
no
just
sense,
insane.
especially when you have a character like that who has never been on the pantheon of these other characters, now is all of a sudden. And instead of running with that momentum and making the right choice and recasting him, they did this to him instead. And the movie was exactly what I said it was going to be, a 2.5 hour funeral for Black Panther, basically.
It's just insane.
And who wants to sit through that?
Okay, if you think about the momentum that the character had on the movies, he was on the background for Infinity War.
But he had an impact there. That's what
Yeah,
also helped
his
too.
scenes
Yeah.
were great. Every single scene where he appears, absolutely banger. That moment, give that man a shield, is maybe one of the most memorable scenes of that movie. Not because it has really good CGI or anything. It's just the interaction. Is the guy was really good understanding his role, understanding how to work on that position, and he killed every scene that he appeared on Endgame.
Yeah.
When he appears, absolutely killing it. Then you go to the newest Black Panther movie, and without the charisma that Chadwick Boseman had, you don't really feel anything, because this stylistic decision of having this hyper technological culture and everything doesn't really make sense unless you see the beginning of the Black Panther movie where they are fighting other how do I say this without getting demonetized? They are fighting bad people from Africa on Africa that are doing terrible things to African people. They are selling them to generate resources, let's just say. Black Panther comes and defeat them and everything. And it's okay, they are kind of policing the African continent and they are helping there. In the second Black Panther movie is like, the world is terrible and we hate everybody and we are the only ones that can have this kind of technology. And it's like, what? The previous movie was about them opening up and showing their technology and giving it to the world, because Black Panther actually saw the effects of trying to keep secrecy. And this is, now we take it back.
Yeah, but each movie is costing more and more. Each movie is building upon, basically they're just diluting in its sense, because unless they bring a new idea, kind of like Alien, true horror movie, great first time, very artistic. Second movie, also great, but more towards the action genre. And then they just ballooned the budgets and diluted the whole thing. But I guess my thing is that all these sequels, Tom was reading them out, all these sequels that are coming out are just the idea, I guess, that Hollywood is just, this is what it wants to spend money on. We don't have no movie stars because you guys gave them Twitter, and then we all heard what they were talking about, and they sunk everything. And now we're like, we have no movie stars to go see. Now we have franchise that they figured by giving us a franchise, we're going to finally be, hey, check it out. It's the, remember that thing that you guys remember? Well, here it is, brand new with X, right? What else is, what are they offering us? Everything seems to be the same, but without the fun. I guess we started with the Godzilla v. Kong because at least that's fun. That was it's a fun movie. So if you give us fun, it's got no problem. It's like, you go see the Meg. It's like going to, you get your ice cream after, you're like, oh, we're going to go see like a fun movie. And then you get your ice cream. But you can't have ice cream all the time.
Hollywood is not having fun.
No, it's not having
They are all the time trying to preach, all the time trying to fight, all the time trying to be overly political. Tell me one time where politics can be really fun if they are not hitting each other. The only things that I can think about that are fun about my country's politics is when somebody on the Congress became absolutely crazy and started kicking the other guy in the face. That in my country, they actually have had gun incidents in the Congress. That's why they created the assembly, and the assembly is exactly the same shit. Because people be people, right? But politics in general are just boring. I don't want to go to a classroom. I don't want to go to something that is just preaching and telling me something that I don't really care. I want to go and have fun, and Hollywood is not giving me that because they are too stuck on politics. They are not trying to have fun.
Well, and this is where the next part of our report is going to come out, is that the kids are also just sick and tired of the politics too, especially the sexual politics, let's call it, because they're sick and tired of it. They think there's too much sex on film. They're confused. They don't know how to make friends anymore. They don't understand true friendship. And I think it's because the lines have been so blurred for them. Like that, I think, is the bigger issue here that we'll get into here in a later video that we got working on. This also is in a study that came out from UCLA late last year. And frankly, I think that's the one thing they need to start paying more attention to too, because I mean, going back to the Ghostbusters thing, this is where I said it might come up again. I think one of the bigger problems that drove people away from it was all the talk of the gay ghost thing, when it's like, well, they didn't go through with it. And even if it was meant to be there to begin with, they clearly cut it out then. And it's probably because of this kind of response, right?
Right.
The kids are just tired of this stuff. They don't need everybody to be shipped. They don't need to have a relationship on screen to make it interesting. I think that was one of the strong things that Godzilla X Kong did, is even though there's like one minor kind of let's say like a hint towards a previous relationship among the cast, it's not really explored. They don't get into it, and the humans are, like I said, literally there just to get the monsters from point A to B and explain to us as an audience what's going on. And I mean, that's fine, and maybe that's one of the reasons why it's playing so well with people, is just because they don't have to worry about all this other bullshit that's not there, right? Like it's not important to the story, so they don't dwell on it. And frankly, that's just one of many things we have problems with. But I think that's one of the key issues, especially when you got Disney movies like Lightyear, where you literally have women kissing in them.
Right.
And then you got to explain to your 4-year-old that shit, right? So
I think Tom actually went straight to the point. There's a lot of sex talk in the movies, right? And people are tired about that. But also, there's not enough sex on the movies as sex. If you remember Why Species, that's a movie that I remember really, really fondly when I was a kid, because it had tits. That's the reason that I like that movie.
And that's fine, but I think in general, though, there is just this problem with, every movie being revolved around that. Yeah.
They made sex boring.
Well, that's what I mean. It's only for certain people now, and it's like, okay. I mean, if you're going to have a certain kind of movie, you would expect some tits to fly out once in a while. That's fine. But if it's a teen, sex comedy, cool. But they couldn't even make a teen sex comedy now like they used to, right? Like, that's the problem. I mean,
they tried with Jennifer Lawrence, and I like
that was more like a middle-aged sex comedy.
Yeah, exactly. That's my point. We had American Pie. We had Porky's.
Yeah. That used to be its own cottage industry. Now, granted, they're called teen sex comedies. They didn't actually star teens. They were technically adults, but the point being,
that was for behind the scenes, Tom. That's what.
They're too old. They're way too old for those producers already. So yeah.
Woo! Man, all right.
But I don't know if you guys wanted to translate that last conversation there.
Ok, básicamente lo que estábamos hablando aquí es Primero, hay demasiadas secuelas. Todo tiene una secuela. Las películas que se vienen, la mayoría son secuelas o precuelas. No tiene realmente un punto en el cual puedas decir esto innova, esto es nuevo, se siente fresco, porque todo es simplemente un rehash de un rehash de un rehash y se vuelve bastante tedioso. Segundo, Hollywood olvidó cómo divertirse, Hollywood olvidó cómo disfrutar las cosas. Y justamente por eso no están conectando con la gente. No entienden realmente cómo no hablar de política, por ejemplo. Y las pocas veces que tienen un momento de honestidad, como la película original de Black Panther, que pueden tener todos los desacuerdos que quieran, pero tenía sus momentos de honestidad sobre esta discusión racial y fue en el momento exacto que salió, como Tom lo dijo, fue el momento exacto, fue el momento perfecto para esa película. La secuela no tuvo absolutamente nada que pensar en ella. Fletcher estaba hablando de las películas de Doctor Strange. Doctor Strange 1 es una de las mejores películas para introducir a alguien a los superhéroes cuando es la clase de persona que no le gustarían los superhéroes.
Pero vas a la número 2 y la número 2 en verdad no conecta nada con la número 1. Tienes que hacer tarea. Tienes que ver esta serie de Disney, tienes que ver a esta otra película y todavía no entienden lo que está pasando. Y eso es el problema, es que ya tienes que venir sabiendo muchas cosas para estas secuelas. No es como una secuela que vos ves una película y ya va la segunda. En ciertas partes tienes como 10 películas y las quieren conectar todas, pero capaz que solo quieres ir al cine y ser entretenido, no quieres hacer una tarea de 13 películas.
Es exactamente eso. Necesitas hacer tarea, necesitas ser uno de esos nerds que se ha visto absolutamente todas las películas para entender la siguiente. Y la verdad, considerando la cantidad de tiempo que ha pasado, considerando la cantidad de personas que empiezan a ver esta clase de películas, qué sé yo, digamos que tenías unos 5 o 6 años, no te dejaban ver estas películas porque eran demasiado violentas. Ahora tienes 12 años y te dejan ver estas películas y vas al cine entusiasmado porque vas a ver a Iron Man dándose de trancazos contra Thanos. Vas a ver Doctor Strange 2. No creo que vayas a ver la siguiente película de Marvel, que es exactamente lo que pasó.
Sí.
Y tuvieron un momento brillante con Spider-Man No Way Home. Tuvieron ese pequeño momento brillante donde todo mundo estuvo de acuerdo. Esta es una buena película. Los niños adoraron tener una película de Spider-Man. Los viejos adoramos tener una película de Spider-Man. ¿Dónde está Tobey Maguire? Y también el otro, seamos honestos, nadie recuerda las películas de Amazing Spider-Man o nadie la recuerda con tanto amor, pero incluso hubo amor por esas películas ahí. Y después nadie fue al resto de películas de Marvel porque no había por qué. No había diversión, no había una razón. Incluso lo que dije al final de la discusión con Tom es, las películas ahora hablan demasiado de sexo, no tienen suficiente sexo. Antes teníamos películas donde veías algo pícaro, veías un momento de tener boobies en la pantalla y eso era suficiente como para que simplemente te rías o quieras tener el clip el resto de tu vida.